trunk, I open up, I sold my soul a good price.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the Nerd Talk podcast by thedigitalworm.com. I'm your host Matt, and I'm here with my co-host John. John, if you'd like to say hello to everyone.
Hey people, what's happening?
So on this show, if you've never listened before, we go through the top 10 things that are interesting that have happened throughout the last week. And we're going to start this week with some... Let's start with some superhero stuff. Let's start with what's on our mind specifically. This is a topic you and I have talked about at length. Talking about Netflix and the situation with Marvel and Netflix. And this week they canceled Daredevil this past week, which is a travesty in both my mind and yours, and we both have different ideas as to why this is going to happen, and we both have ideas on speculation as to what can happen in the future. John, I'm going to let you start off first. Talk about where your head is at with the cancellation and what can possibly happen in the future.
Well, I tell you, I can't help but wonder because the original to get canceled, all of the articles point towards Disney pulling stuff and Disney pulling these things and not wanting to renew things. But this is a little differently. This is Netflix saying, we're just not going to do this anymore. And I think that what we're seeing here is those first two shows is getting pulled by Disney as the beginning of a power play to try to get more money from their share of that with Netflix. And when Netflix realized what's going on, the original content that they're producing that they actually own and that are owned by smaller companies than Disney, and they realized we don't actually need Disney to, and they said no thanks. And that's why they're pulling the plug on Daredevil, in my opinion. I think that we will see those remaining seasons of those two shows that are still in production, Jessica Jones and The Punisher, because there's contracts in place. They deals have been made. So I think that we will see those two shows, and I think that will be the last of the what I consider the Marvel Knights imprint for.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. And my issue has always been, ever since Disney released information about their own streaming service and when they were gonna come out with it, like the Marvel shows have always been a question, right?
One thing I think is interesting is one of the articles we looked at. The head writer basically said that he felt like the show was too big to fail. And that kind of is an ironic statement because the last thing that we heard was too big to fail was the Titanic.
That's kind of funny. Well, when one of the other articles I sent you, Netflix was, as far as ratings go, one of Netflix's top 5 most popular shows. I mean, that's up there with Stranger Things. And, I don't see Stranger Things getting canceled. They're going to let that show do its thing for as long as they possibly can, right?
Right, but, Stranger Things is not a licensed intellectual property.
That's true. That's true. I mean,
it's possible that Daredevil could have gotten up to top 2 or top 3, and they were still making less on that show, as far as people coming in to subscribe to them based on that show. But really, they're paying some amount of dividends going to, or it never would have happened.
Right. It's pretty clear at this point that it's all Marvel. Like Netflix they're trying to move on with some things, and Marvel was just making it hard because they wanted to make it hard because they don't want the competition. And by the competition, we're talking about other superhero shows, but there's always going to be superhero shows, at least for the near future. I mean, they're huge right now. The superhero movies and television programs have the highest ratings and highest ticket sales of anything else coming out. Like there's no comparison.
Well, it just goes back to the most main thing is always going to be the most popular. Back in the 50s and 60s, westerns and space operas were really popular. The space operas were hard to pull off because of special effects. Westerns were easier to pull off because you just need to show something look like a desert or someone's idea of a desert, and then add some six guns and you're good to go. But that was so different from suburban life in the 50s and 60s that people were just really captured by it because it was something that they're not used to. And the same thing with same thing is true of superheroes. That's very different from what we consider our mundane life. And as special effects get better, that's going to get more and more true. And I think that if you notice, science fiction space shows are always right there at that number 2 spot. The number 1 spot can rotate out a lot, but number 2 is always Star Trek style things, and part of that is that the technology is getting better and better for effects, in my opinion.
I feel like you just said that just for me, because Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, was my favorite show of all time. Huge fan of that show. Great casting, great acting, great story, just all around fantastic show.
Oh, I would definitely put it in my top. If I were to make a top 10, I think it's in there somewhere for sure.
But my speculation as far as the Marvel shows go is that they are dead. I think Marvel, at least for a while, Marvel may bring them back into the MCU at some point, but it's going to be with a different cast for sure. I think the actors and the stories.
I hope you're wrong.
Yeah, but I've been hitting the nail right on the head with some of this shit lately. Like I call.
Yeah, but you know how I feel about reboots, man. I would rather never hear the name of that character again than see another actor take its place.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest, I don't think any of the fans of the shows want to see anyone but those characters play them again. And it's hard to tell if Marvel's gonna be down with that. So I think most likely what's gonna happen is they're just dead.
Perhaps we'll see animated analogs. It's easier to feel like that's a different thing.
Well, with Disney, you never know what they're gonna do, because they can, that's what they're known for is animation,
True.
So yeah, I think it's completely reasonable to see those guys come back and do some voice acting and see those shows go animated. Kind of like what Disney did with the Clone Wars. I never watched that show, but I know it's a thing, and I know now they're doing some live action stuff that's like semi-related that they're planning for their Disney Plus streaming service.
Right. Well, that show specifically is one of the few things that's considered canon for Star Wars. Feature films plus Clone Wars plus apparently there's a Rogue Squadron anime series of the same style of animation, which I didn't watch either because that style of animation just doesn't do anything for me. That I wanted to like, and I really liked the plots of, but I just couldn't watch, was Beware the Batman. It uses that same animation model, and I just can't do it.
I am actually not familiar with that. Do you have another reference?
You should check it out sometime. If you can handle that style of animation, the stories are very, very good.
Well, that's what I'm talking about is a style of animation. Is there anything else that I may have seen? Because I haven't.
The only things that use that.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, never mind.
Yeah, it's for the last 10 years at least, and I think it might be proprietary to a single studio, but don't quote me on that.
So, do you think Netflix, this is a big question I've been wondering, do you think there's any other comics or superhero stories that they could get their hands on? Obviously DC is out of the picture for them, and Marvel's out of the picture for them, but is there anything else they may look into as far as comics go?
Well, I don't know that Netflix is really in the business of looking for things anymore, and I don't think that they have been looking for things for the past 5 years or so. I think that they are to the level of point that folks seek them out, and they get their pick now. That wasn't always the case, but they do get their pick now. I think that folks are in a strange place right now in that you've got Marvel and DC. Marvel's owned by Disney, DC's owned by Warner Brothers, and they each have their own media arms other than comics to kind of run things through. You got Image is less of a company and more of a flea market. People, each creator within Image owns everything about their own properties. So that's why you don't see an Image comic symbol on The Walking Dead, because the guy who created Walking Dead owns The Walking Dead. So, we are seeing occasional films and TV shows based on Image comics, but unless you're an Image comics reader, you're really never going to know that, how that's set up.
What about that? Sorry, go ahead.
Smallish comic studios like Boom and Dynamite, but a lot of those things made by them, I mean, there is some original stuff, but a lot of their stuff is licensed intellectual properties. Licensed intellectual properties from existing comic book manufacturers. And you've got your real small houses, which are super interesting. There's a lot of dark horse stuff that's really good, but they're so small that they can't really field anything. So comics are kind of in a strange place right now for media.
What about this new book or graphic novel, I can't remember, that Robert Downey Jr. is producing for Hulu?
What's it called?
I can't remember what it's called, but I remember sending you a link, and it's something about like a centaur or something, or like a deer maybe.
Sweet Tooth.
Yes, I think that is correct. And I remember you telling me that it was just like an amazing graphic novel.
It's completely insane. It's great, and it's also owned by DC. That's a Vertigo book.
Oh, okay.
Vertigo book.
I didn't know Vertigo was owned by DC.
Oh yeah. They so DC has always had this undertone to them. They were, the Silver Age for DC was the hopeful age of comics for DC, but even then there was this vein of dark that sometimes showed around the edges, and then in Bronze Age you see it more in their horror books like House of Secrets, House of Mysteries, stuff like that. And also, you get some darker heroes. That's when we see the creation of Swamp Thing for one thing. And you get into the 80s, and there's a lot of authors, people like Neil Gaiman, people like Alan Moore, Warren Ellis, all these guys were in their 20s at the time in the 80s, and then they were Generation X to the core. They were really dark. They were really interesting. And so DC, the room they needed, but also to kind of show people, hey, this is maybe different than our stuff. They created the Vertigo line, the first books of that being...
Let's talk about the at&t streaming service. They have been very quiet about this until now. For those of you who don't know, and I'm one of the people who did not know, at&t owns Time Warner, which is Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers owns DC. So essentially, at&t owns DC. And they are going to be coming out with their own streaming service right around the same time that Disney Plus is coming out. Now, something else to consider is at&t also basically owns HBO. So we're going to see a streaming service with a triple-tiered kind of package. And one of those packages, their top package, their top tier, is going to pretty much have everything. And I speculate that that's going to include the DC Universe site. Like, you'll have one username and one password, and you can log into DC, you can log into, HBO, whatever. And I think it's going to be absolutely insane. at&t is a very, very large company, and always has been a very large company. And John, you pointed out to me that it's had to have been broken up by the government multiple times for monopoly reasons.
Yeah, they were Ma Bell. They were the original communications poly empire. They had a stranglehold on both long distance and local telephone lines for basically the entirety of the 60s and most of the 70s and late 70s, early 80s. The Trade Commission busted them up a couple of times. It's also worth noting that they also own DirecTV. They've got avenues into disseminate this information. They also, have their own cable and pretty much do every aspect of this. I'm interested to see where they go with it and what they do for. They already have a lot of original programming. They actually are the company that produces a show called Mr. Mercedes, which is based on a trilogy of detective novels that Stephen King wrote about 5 years ago. Really good books, really good show. A little disturbing, but it's good stuff. I worry about all these streaming things showing up, man. Like of Netflix, and then shortly after Hulu, and for years it was just Netflix and Hulu, and kind of Amazon Prime. But Amazon's got their own thing going because you get that in addition to the free shipping thing, in addition to the discounted products, you can also stream some stuff. And so it's kind of like, here's an added bonus. But specifically, just when it was just Netflix and Hulu, alternative to cable for young people, it's for people like us, people who are not interested in being advertised to, people who are not interested in seeing, sporting events that we don't care about, or infomercials, having to run through all these channels. We just find what we want and we go with it. And now, let's say you want all the superhero content. Right now, you need 3 subscriptions. You need Hulu, you need Netflix, and you need DC Universe. And soon, probably also at&t. Those things is $8 to $12 a month. You're almost to a cable bill as it is.
Well, from the research I've done, the average cable bill in this country is into triple digits now for like monthly. And even if you do all 4 of those streaming services, you're still only looking at half of what most people are paying for cable.
Well, that triple digit, people paying for cable, they're also paying for a bundle for their cable, like their cable internet. They're also, a lot of these people get sports packages. I'm talking about just regular, quote unquote, basic cable with 40 channels is around $50 a month. Everything else is add-ons.
Well, here's the thing about the AT&T service is they own, Turner, which is, TNT, TBS, etc., correct?
Right.
So those are 2 pretty good-sized sports networks. And as I don't know if you're aware of this, but Disney owns ESPN. So I think we're going to see a lot of sports competition between these 2 services. I fully expect Disney to start doing some streaming sports stuff on either Disney Plus or Hulu at some point. I don't know if they currently offer
I'm not sure how
those.
that's going to work out for them, actually. One thing that's easy to forget about is the rights for sports broadcasting is owned by the leagues of the sports.
Yeah, they have
an easy way to consider that. If you look at the NFL, they do have a streaming contract already, and it's with Twitch.
Yes, I have watched occasional games on Twitch, to be honest. I consume a lot of Twitch content. We've talked about this before. Plus, I'm a streamer. I mean, anyone who's visited this YouTube channel can see the growing Twitch content that is being placed on the YouTube channel. But yeah, there's all kinds of shit on Twitch, and yes, they do show NFL games. I think they showed the Thursday night games. I can't remember what else they're showing, but it is fantastic quality, to be honest. It's the quality of that stream is better than anything you'll see on TV. It's ridiculous.
Oh, absolutely, and it can be because it's through the internet. There you don't have to worry about any broadcasting entities with it. I do think that the current contract is only for the Thursday night games. This is also the first year they've done it. But looking at the numbers, I haven't clicked into it yet, but I have noticed the numbers on it. There's a lot of people watching that, dude.
Well, yeah, I mean, Twitch is a free service. you don't have to pay anything. That means you can just seriously log onto a Twitch account and watch a Thursday night NFL game, and probably the highest quality you will see in anytime in the near future.
Sure.
Compared to what you see on a your standard 40-inch television, like, it just destroys it. I mean, it's almost like you're at the game, but better. Like, I would rather watch that Twitch stream than actually be at the game itself, just because of the ridiculous quality that I'm getting out of it.
I mean, Twitch also kind of has that grassroots feeling to it, though. Like there's a novelty to watching things on Twitch that you don't get on other mediums.
Which is hilarious because it's owned by Amazon, which is the largest company on the planet.
It didn't start out being owned by Amazon, though. They bought it.
Well, yeah, I mean, everything is a subsidiary of a subsidiary.
When it was just at&t,
right,
in a basement. So it did start as a small thing. Those dudes, I hope for those guys' sake that they're set for life.
Well, they ought to be.
Acquisition was really, really good to them.
I mean, Twitch, in my opinion, is one of the greatest things out right now. I feel like all you need is one or two paid streaming services and then a Twitch account, and you have enough entertainment to last you forever.
To be honest, the last couple of months, I'm pretty much just on Twitch watching and interacting with people. And part of it is the interaction. One thing I've always wanted on Netflix be, if you go into a TV show to watch a show, there could be like a chat thing like in Twitch that people who are watching, not even necessarily the same episode, people are watching the show, talking to each other about what they're watching. Something that Netflix misses, something that you can actually catch on Facebook now. I think I mentioned last time we did this, that one of the Facebook groups I'm in, what's called a Facebook watch party, where someone streams something and you're watching a movie together and you can chat with each other on the side. Yeah. That's an interaction level that you get on Twitch that you don't get on anything else hardly.
Yep. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, that's why we stream, though, right? As we want to interact. Like, anybody can play video games alone. But, the second you put on a headset and, you're playing with your team members and you're chatting with them, then you start thinking, what if I get more, what if I integrate more interaction in with this? What's going to happen? And then that's how you get people like Ninja and other big name streamers that are making absurd amounts of money right now. And they're making the money because it's a good thing. I love Twitch and I love Netflix, and right now those are pretty much the only two services I'm using on a regular basis.
Checking out the DC service within the next 2 months, and once I pull the trigger on that, I'm gonna when we next time we do happens, I'm probably gonna give some data for you folks to make some decisions with, hopefully.
Well, I think I'm going to wait. I think I'm going to try out both the Disney and the at&t service when they first come out and see what all they're offering. I get the feeling that something's telling me this at&t service is going to be incredible.
Well, the material is definitely there. If they decide to make good use of what they have, that's very possible that it's going to be an extremely positive thing.
Well, this whole discussion on this topic actually leads beautifully into the next topic, which is Hulu and other streaming services, at&t included, have a new plan for showing ads and commercials. The idea they're tinkering with is that when you press pause on, you want to go grab a snack or a drink or something while you're streaming, that's when it will show ads.
And that is when I will unsubscribe.
All right, we are on the 100% same page here. I do not pay a premium to watch commercials. Like, if I wanted to do that, I would just go get cable. I'm not watching commercials. That's not why I'm paying you people money. I'm paying you people money because I want a service and I want it to be ad and commercial free.
Time in my life when commercials are even in the same room as me is when I'm in bars and I happen to look at a television in a bar, and every time that happens, it's always on commercial, because apparently commercials is all you see anymore on television. Another reason not to have it. And the commercial comes on, and you look at it, and it's one of two things. Somehow, I haven't had regular television since 2007, but somehow it's a commercial from back in those days, and I've seen it before when I had. It is so mindless and terrible that I don't understand what has happened to this culture, what has happened to the mainstream version of this world, while I've been not paying attention.
I can actually explain that, John.
Also, when did they start cursing on commercials?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Holy shit.
I haven't owned a TV since 2008, so we're kind of on the same page there, but I don't really do the bar thing, so I don't know what you're talking about. What is this swearing thing?
Well, specifically, it was commercial for beer in a bar, and the closed captioning was on because it's what you do when it's loud. You turn off you turn off the sound, and you turn on the closed captioning for people who actually want to pay attention. I looked up at the TV, and I happened to see the words, "What is this shit?" Here, it was about a couple of months ago, and it is the fact that in advertising on broadcast television, where a 7-year-old, where did we get this? I mean, I know you can say shit on television now on a program. I get that. But when you tune into a program, the program you're watching. You're in control of that. And you can say, well, I don't mind hearing the word shit. My 6-year-old kid's off doing something else. This is fine. But a commercial can be on during anything, theoretically. I don't know how we've gotten there as a culture where and this is coming from someone who I swear like a sailor. How we got to this place as a people, I'll never understand.
I've got some insight into that. First of all, advertising is all about getting someone's attention, and because we live in an age where most people have become extremely desensitized to advertising, right? Like, most of us just don't even notice it anymore. So these advertisers have to go out of their way for an attention grab so that they can get more eyes on their ad. And I don't know how something like that slips through the cracks. It's probably something. Now, they can, the TV, these companies can decide when and where an ad is placed. And so I'm guessing this was late at night, probably on a station or network that was designed for adults. So the likelihood of a 6 or 7-year-old kid watching it is probably pretty low.
On ESPN.
Yeah, so you're not going to see a 6-year-old kid watching ESPN at 10 o'clock at night. It's pretty unlikely, anyway. That is a network that is known to cater to adult males between, 18 and 50, right?
Fair enough, but still really set me off.
Yeah, I understand.
Man.
And I get it. But the fact is people really aren't watching television anymore. Like, you and we are not the only people who have done the cord cutting thing. Now, we may...
Oh, definitely not.
We were definitely in the first generation of our age group to do so. That was right around when, because you and I have a habit of doing shit before other people start doing shit. And people think we're insane for giving it a shot. And then 5 years down the road, they're doing it. And we're off on something else. That's just how you and I tend to be with certain weird things. But...
True.
But cord cutting is a big deal these days. Like, there's all kinds of, and I was a member of the personal finance community for a long time. I had a personal finance blog. That's how my life where it is now started. 2 years ago, I started a personal finance blog about getting out of debt, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, the point is, cord cutting is huge. Like, it's being done on a level that is blowing the cable companies' minds. Like, that's why they're looking to place ads in other places, because they know we aren't watching television anymore. That's why you're seeing ads on Twitch. You're seeing ads on I don't know if you've ever heard of the service called Crackle. It's Sony's streaming service. It's completely ad supported. There's no option for a premium service. But you're starting to see a lot more ads online in places you wouldn't have thought you would see ads, and that's because the advertising industry is looking for new ways to get eyes on products and services. and that's what I hate about. I don't hate the advertising industry. Don't get me wrong. Those are people who work hard, and advertising is how a lot of people find out about certain products or services. So I'm not hating on the industry itself. What I'm doing is I'm hating on the fact that I'm paying a premium price for a premium service, and I don't want there to be ads on it. And that's why, that's why I love Netflix, as I'm fairly certain we will never see ads on Netflix's service ever.
Definitely.
But AT&T and Disney, I don't know if you read any more into this AT&T thing, but apparently they've had a lot of acquisitions, especially lately, and they're now about $20 billion in debt. So this ad revenue is probably looking to chip away on that debt some. I also know that they're thinking they have a small stake in Hulu. And with their new service coming out, I saw some articles online saying they're looking to possibly unload their 10% stake, which has a valuation of almost $1 billion. So I'm thinking, and their stake in Hulu isn't the only thing they're looking to sell. They're looking to get rid of several of their minority stakes in different properties.
To be honest with you, I think that the potential to get rid of their stake in Hulu is less driven by a worry over how much debt they're in. Companies, especially large corporations with many subsidiaries, the way business works in America, it's normal to have a lot of debt. What sounds like a lot of debt to you and us as humans, we're running at a deficit is normal for most businesses. Amazon took 20 years not to be in debt. It's just, that's kind of how American finance works as far as conglomerations go. I think that the likely reason for them to dump Hulu, and I think that if they do pull the trigger on their streaming service, they are going to dump their share in Hulu, goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the antitrust. It could be viewed by the trade commissions that if they have a minority but reasonable share, when 10% of something as big as Hulu is a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
They have a fair percentage of Hulu, and then they're starting their own premium service. That could be taken as a unilateral move towards antitrust issue, and they. If there's anyone that does not want to have to deal with that again, it's AT&T.
I think that's a pretty good point.
They're lucky to be allowed to do business and have been for the past 40 years.
Well, any company that big has got deep pockets, and they can probably buy their way out of a lot of problems.
Certainly.
But the article that I read doesn't necessarily mean that it's right or accurate. It just said that AT&T's plan, I don't know if that came, I can't remember if this was a direct quote from AT&T or if this was speculation from the author of this article, that they were looking to just reduce their debt down. And one of the ways they could do that was to get rid of Hulu, which, as you just pointed out, would be knocking out multiple birds with one stone. Let's switch it up here. I know I'm jumping all over the list today. Let's talk about NASA. NASA reveals a handful of private companies are going to help it return to the moon and also beyond the moon. Lockheed Martin, which is kind of a household name as far as massive corporations go, is going to be involved. But there are some other companies as well that you've probably never heard of. I know I've never heard of them. They include Astrobotic Technology, Deep Space Systems, Draper, Firefly Aerospace, Intuitive Machines, Maston Space Systems, Moon Express, and Orbit Beyond. And so basically what's going on is NASA's going to open up the door to contracts from private companies to help it achieve its goals with going to the moon and eventually going to Mars. Now, I keep up with this stuff a lot more than John does, and to me it looks like private companies as well as NASA, I include private companies instead of just saying SpaceX because there are other companies besides SpaceX looking to get into this, that it's looking more and more like people are wanting to go into space and get stuff done. It's not so much exploration anymore. I personally feel like these are the beginning stages of looking into off-world colonization. This could just be me being a science fiction nerd. It's very possible, but I mean, NASA has publicly stated that they want boots on the ground on the moon and on Mars, and there's not really a lot of other reason to do that other than to either set up at least a temporary off-world colony, or to explore resources and find out if there's anything we can use there. But there's also the chance that there's a lot of people interested in starting off-world colonization, and some of these companies seem to be into that. But this is the first time NASA has done anything like this. And there's a good way of looking at it and a bad way of looking at it, just like there is with anything. The bad way of looking at it is, you're letting independent contractors influence a government agency, right? Like, that's always a concern. That's always been a concern with the military, but the government can't do everything. And if you've listened to this podcast before, I'm all about, companies doing more, individuals doing more, and the government doing less. That's just kind of my thing. And I think this is a great way for independent companies to help us push forward with what's going on in the solar system and the universe outside of our home planet. John, do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, the only way this is ever going to happen is if it does go through individual companies. The last 3 administrations have made it very clear, really the last 4 administrations have made it very clear that any type of exploration like that is going to be mostly funded by the private sector. None of them, the ones you like, the ones you don't like, doesn't matter. None of them are overly interested or curious about those types of things and going in those places. If we had a moon somewhere in the solar system that we guarantee was like oil on the face of it, and it was all petroleum, mineral rights would matter. Planting a flag somewhere would matter. That would be a thing. But the little bit of exploration on the moon that we did, the little we know about Mars, usable minerals, usable material does not seem to be super evident really anywhere. There are some scientists who feel that they have found some things in the asteroid belts, work as really good raw materials for fuel and for building materials. So I think that there probably is a lot of value in a manned expedition to the asteroid belt. The problem with that is fuel and weight. And there are people right now working on that, and maybe they'll solve it, maybe they won't. I don't know. I specifically myself don't see the value in generation or the next generation in colonization of a planet or moon in the solar system. We don't have the terraforming capabilities to make this work in a way that's going to be a livable life. You have to take into consideration, maybe 30 years from now, our science will be better and we will have the ability to do some terraforming actions, at least, in a dome situation or underground situation. But we're so far from that now. It's hard for me to, be gung-ho about that.
Well, that much I understand, but it seems like NASA and some of these private companies, I mean, there's got to be a reason for them to want to do more exploration off Earth. Like you said, if it's a case of there not being a lot of resources on the moon or on Mars, there's got to be some reason aside from just wanting to do it. And I can't think of any other reason besides colonization. All right, this is a John topic, okay, guys? For all of you out there listening, John is kind of my comics guy. Like, if I ever have a question about a comic, I talked to him about it because either he knows or he knows somebody who knows. And Marvel just came out last week and said they're going to make a movie. And it's a hero that I think a lot of people didn't really expect to see having its own film. I'm talking about Shang-Chi. He's a martial artist. Did I pronounce that right? Shang-Chi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's most interesting about this guy is he doesn't technically have any superpowers. He's kind of like, imagine, he's supposed to be quote unquote the greatest martial artist ever. And it looks like a really interesting character. I never read this comic. But he seems pretty cool. And I really like the idea of a superhero movie that where the main character is not going to have any powers. It's John got me into watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. not too long ago, and pretty much the entire first season was no one on the team had any powers, and they were constantly dealing with enhanced people and Inhumans, etc. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and I think I'm really going to enjoy this movie as well. I don't think they have casted anybody as the lead role yet, but they have announced that they are working on the movie. John, I'm going to let you take it from here and talk about this character and maybe even some possible storylines.
The most interesting couple of things about Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu, is to DC Comics. And what I mean by that is Marvel to make a comic series, Kung Fu, the television program. Kwai Jin Kang, played by Carradine, it was super popular at the time. Honestly, it was a very, very good show, and shows this Shaolin monk going throughout the United States on a pilgrimage to find his people, to find his past. And Warner Communications owned, at that point, even back then, they owned DC, so there was no way in hell that they were going to let Marvel, the comparative DC, create a show based on one of their television shows. It just wasn't going to happen. Ironically, they never did a comic based on it in DC either. There just was never a Kung Fu book. But they still wanted to do something like that, and so they conceived of Shang-Chi as the master of Chinese martial arts, all Chinese martial arts. Interesting thing about Shang-Chi to me is intellectual property attached to it in the main villain of his comics, Fu Manchu. Fu Manchu was created in 1933 as a mega villain in action stories and for original films, and ownership on that character name kind of became blurred over the years. So in 1972, when Marvel started putting out, they used that name because people already knew it's kind of a stereotypical name for a maniacal supervillain of Asian descent. So they kind of co-opted that about 10 years, and eventually the daughter of the guy who originally created the character sued him and said, hey, you can't use my dad's character name for this unless you pay me. So they stopped using that, and they renamed the character. But like nerds know that's who that is. It's Fu Manchu. And the original Fu Manchu stuff, the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, some of the most racist stuff you're ever going to come across as far as dealing with. It is very stereotypical. It very much looks down on. It's not a positive thing. It really wasn't that great in the 70s of Marvel either. This is one of those things that they kind of probably would kind of wish people like me would stop talking about. But that's just not going to happen. So you got those two kind of strains, and honestly, super massively popular book throughout the entirety of the 70s. After that, you didn't see them a whole lot in the 90s, mid 2000s. He starts showing up in the Avengers books as a supporting character. He's part of the Avengers. Actually, in the mid 2000s, he did acquire superpowers. I'm not sure if that's still part of what they're doing in the books now, but for a time at least, he was able to make copies himself. See that in the movie, if I had to guess, I think it's probably going to be more a modern day kung fu film with Shang-Chi. I hope they don't make some of the decisions that they've made, like in Doctor Strange, they made the Ancient One
white.
That was she's white and she's also a lady. I don't mind changing gender. I kind of mind changing nationality for that specific character because they're in Tibet. There's reasons for doing things a certain way in that specific situation.
Well, they did the same thing with Iron Fist, which pissed a lot of people off.
Also, Danny Rand's always been white.
Really? I thought Danny Rand was supposed to be Asian.
Nope, Danny Rand. The backstory we get from Danny Rand in the show is the exact backstory from it.
Then why were people raising so much hell over it?
Because the guy playing Danny Rand sucks.
I like him.
Are in the minority.
I know I am, but I usually am. I thought Iron Fist was a great show. I thought it took a while to get off the ground like most Marvel shows do. And, well, not most Marvel shows, most Netflix shows take a few episodes to get off the ground. And once you kind of understand that, then you start to look at those shows in a different way. Like, you look at the first...
I watched the entirety of the first season. I watched the first 3 episodes of the second season. Finn Jones puts me to sleep. I will tell you, there is a product I would buy if it existed. Articles. I would buy that. It might cure my insomnia.
So, Batwoman is going to be introduced to the CW superhero lineup. This is starting off as an Elseworlds thing. Elseworlds, every year the CW does some sort of crossover with all the different universes, which includes the Arrowverse. Well, the Arrowverse and the Flash are in the same universe, but Supergirl, as well as some other characters, and they cross over with. They have like a storyline that lasts 3 to 4 episodes, and each episode is on one of the different shows. Like, episode 1 of the crossover may be on Arrow, episode 2 might be on the Flash, and it's kind of a neat thing that they do. And this year they're doing something called Elseworlds, and they're introducing a lot more DC characters into it. Now, I watch these shows when they arrive on Netflix, like a lot of people do, so I don't get the pleasure of seeing it done as it unfolds. But they are introducing Batwoman. Batwoman, interestingly enough, is being played by an actress named Ruby Rose. She was in John Wick 2, and she's also mostly known for being on Orange is the New Black, which, as much as I love Netflix, I couldn't get into that show. I watched like half of the first season and just stopped. But I really liked her in John Wick 2. I thought she was pretty good. She's a Australian lady. She's a model. I think she looks like Justin Bieber. John, do you think she looks like Justin Bieber?
Well, I did just now have to look up what Justin Bieber looked like because I really couldn't tell you before just now. So thanks for that, buddy.
You're welcome.
I don't think they look anything like one another. And Justin Bieber's kind of scary looking. How he was a teenage musical person, but it's kind of terrifying.
I thought he was a teenage musical person. I'm really excited
for Batwoman. This is something I'm super stoked about.
Do you think the actress has the... I think she has the look that they're going for here. What do you think?
She looks exactly like the comic book character.
Yeah. I think it was
once she puts the hair on, she looks exactly like the comic book character. This is a perfect casting.
I agree.
Honestly, DC CW at finding very good actors who look and sound like these characters are supposed to be. The lady who plays Cara Danvers is, in my mind, she is Supergirl, and that's just the end of it. Like that could be that character in looks, acts, voice, inflection, facial expression, everything. And I think that we're probably about to see a similar caliber of within Batwoman. I'm really excited to see what supporting characters we get for her. I'm excited to see what that version of Gotham looks like. It's been hinted at that Batman has existed on her planet, but he's been gone for a long time. So I'm hoping for some intrigue on that. She's probably going to try to figure out where the fuck he is too. And there's a lot of potential here.
I think when it comes to any of the Bat characters, there's just so much potential. There's so many different storylines with those characters. You can almost do whatever you want.
I really like how DC television has been skirting around Batman. You've got the Fox show with Gotham dealing with a teenage Bruce Wayne and focusing around Detective Gordon, and now you've got Batwoman living in the universe where Gotham exists. The crime is there, and there's no Batman to cop out on things, and it's very, very, in my opinion.
Did you want to take this opportunity to geek out about the new season and final season of Gotham getting ready to come out next month?
Of how they dealt with alternate universes that do have continuity. Before. Well, I mean, DC. All long-lasting comic universes have issues with continuity. DC specifically has always had a multiverse view of the universe is. There's always been, Superman, Superboy, Supergirl don't always live on the same plane of existence, basically.
Sure.
But then there was this desire to do stories that didn't fit into what we consider to be normal worlds, and that's where Elseworlds came in. The first book to get the title of Elseworlds was something called Gotham by Gaslight, which basically puts Batman in the time frame of Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper escapes London, ends up in Gotham, and a Victorian age Batman hunts him. And it's very dark. It's very well done. Some of the better art of the late 80s is found in Gotham by Gaslight. And they actually just recently did an animated film. I don't know if you've seen much of DC's animated films, but they are very good at what they do for the animated films. I almost wish they would just action films alone and just deal with TV shows and animated films, because those are the areas in which they are better than Marvel, in my opinion.
Well, they always get an amazing cast for those voice actors. Mark Hamill has been the Joker for 10 years, maybe more.
He's almost always the Joker, absolutely. And some of the people who have been Batman voice-wise over the years have been amazing. I mean, to me, there's always only ever going to be one voice of Batman, and it's from the animated series. That he will always.
Yeah, that guy was really good.
The guy he is Batman for me. I would watch a live action TV show of someone else doing the action and him just being the voice of Batman, and I would love every second of it. Another thing interesting to me about the Elseworlds thing and how they're calling it Elseworlds is ability to tell stories that they wouldn't maybe not necessarily have the ability to tell. You seem to see, I've only seen one teaser trailer of this. I try not to see trailers. I try not to see spoilers. I did see one teaser trailer of this specific crossover in the shows, and we see what may be a dark Superman, which is always interesting. Superman, to me, is one of the least compelling comic book characters in the world, and so anytime you can put a twist on it, right, more than willing to listen to it. Perhaps one of the best Elseworlds books they ever made was called Red Sun. Basically, a universe where instead of landing in Kansas, Kal-El landed in the middle of Soviet Russia. Lex Luthor, as still trying to stop Superman, but from a situation where Lex Luthor is also trying to save the world from Superman, because he is just a tool of the Soviet. I don't know if they ever made an animated film about that one, but I kind of wish they would.
Gotham, the final season, season 5, is about to come out next month, and I know you love that show, and I love that show, and it's looking like Bruce Wayne is finally going to become Batman as we know him. Do you have any thoughts on that? But by the way, I will say this real quick before I let you get started. That show, it's just awesome, and not just Batman, but some of this, what they've done with these characters has been just extraordinary. Especially the evolution of the Joker, who's one of my favorite characters of all time. So, all right, enough geeking out by me. I'll let you go.
On this one, man, to be honest with you, I just finished watching the most recent completed season on Netflix. I'm not going to be seeing any of the new season until it goes on to Netflix, this time next year. And to be honest with you, I'm going to try hard not to see anything about what's happening on it. I like things to be unspoiled, so that we see the beginnings of Batman, it's possible that we don't. It really just, I'm not sure how they're going to go with it. I think you can go either way. Ra's al Ghul specifically, you can go either way. So, we definitely are talking about an alternate universe here, because all these characters. So it's really hard to say.
It is, and
if we do see Batman, it's going to be the last frame of the last scene of the last episode. And that'll be the end of the show, for sure.
Which just...
That's my prediction.
Makes me a little tingly.
That's fair.
I mean, just... Batman has always been one of my favorite characters. Not because of his vast wealth, but because of the constant internal and external struggles he puts himself through. And his mind is just completely different than the mind of every other character in the DC universe. Like, I know, I can't remember the name of it, but he had this plan to neutralize every member of the Justice League should shit go bad. And then somebody, I don't know if it's Lex Luthor or somebody else, finds out about it and actually starts like implementing those strategies. I can't remember the name. I don't remember if it was in a movie or part of a comic book, but
it's in both.
But it's no other character really thinks like that. Let's move on here. We're gonna get a little serious here. We're gonna finish up the day with some more stuff, but we're gonna talk about a little more current affairs right now. The NYPD now has a fleet of drones for quote-unquote tactical operations. Now, on one hand, this is a good idea. It's going to help with, hostage stuff, a few other things where, they won't have to put the lives of cops on the line in a scenario when a drone could do the work. On the other hand, and the scarier hand, is this could be used for surveillance on innocent people. You were getting into a major invasion of privacy issue potential here. I do not like it. Like, as much as I like the idea of keeping cops safe and letting them do their jobs, I don't like the idea of there being the question of this massive invasion of privacy, and where's it going to go after this? Before you know it, there's just going to be drones flying all over the place, looking into people's windows, and there's not going to be a whole lot we can do about it.
To be really honest with you, I'm not a big fan of slippery slope arguments. It's just not kind of, because it just never works out that way. That's a tactic that people use to scare the shit out of us that typically just does not come to fruition. I think that as it is in New York City, it's one of the biggest one of the biggest cities in the world as far as it's definitely up there within the Western Hemisphere. What we're not going to see is machine guns on mini helicopters. This is not what this is.
Yeah, definitely not.
That's just not how that works. You strap a machine gun to one of those things, you take a shot, and then you're not in the air anymore. That's just how it works. I think if you're in a big city, you're being recorded anyway. Companies that need that security of having, the outside cameras, everything around you, you're being photographed, you're being videotaped, you're being filmed. You're in a city of any size at all. So this is not new. This is not, this is nothing special. We also, especially here in the States, realize that they're not military surplus. I mean, if you look at all these, even rural sheriff and police departments are being given things like tanks and have been for decades. Anything the military doesn't need that's still usable goes to local law enforcement in one way or another. So I'm a little surprised these actually aren't just retired desert. These are new, mostly things you can buy off the market. Used for crowd control. I think they'll be used for looking for people, fleeing on foot in certain situations. I don't think it's going to go too much further than that. As far as looking through windows, they've got better ways to do that. The military has cameras that can literally go through the wall, for that.
Well, I mean, I agree. I just, it's just the whole, where are they going to draw the line and who's, I don't know. I think it's just a natural distrust in the government for me, not to get too political, but I'm skeptical of anytime a government entity is like, hey, we have this new idea and we're going to use this technology to do it. I'm just kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that. Just kind of glad I don't live in New York.
I do get that.
I mean, it's not like there's anything that we can do about it, right? But still, I mean, it just raises up, it definitely poses a privacy concern. I mean, you and I are both fairly private people. And, but yeah, you're right. I mean, for all we know, they're watching and monitoring everything that's done everywhere. I mean, we don't know how much they're doing it, but I mean, it's definitely possible they could be. And, this is just a little more obvious and in your face. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely the side where it could potentially save a lot of lives. So, I'm not hating completely on the idea. It's just one of those things where, me being me, I'm trying to look at every different angle and argument that can be had over it. And I definitely think it could
makes perfect sense, man. I'm not down in the argument. I'm just trying to temper it with when it comes down to it, if you're gonna get got for something, you're gonna get got for it. Yeah. If it's a legitimate thing, then it's a legitimate thing. If it's not a legitimate thing and you still get got for it, you're still got. That's just how things go. The only thing you can do is be aware as you can be and hope it doesn't go down bad.
You are completely right. And, I mean, see, New York has, I think they have right around 50,000 cops in New York City, somewhere around there. So it's essentially a small army, and not even that small. And it's a dangerous job. New York is a much safer city than it used to be. So I understand the need for such equipment. And I just hope they use it wisely. We're going to move on to our next topic here, which to me is one of the most fun topics, and it's pretty neat in my opinion. Researchers have found a way to turn lobster shells into biodegradable plastic. For anyone who's into the whole environment thing and going green, you probably know that a lot of the biodegradable plastics really aren't that biodegradable. There's a lot of problems with them, like sometimes when they biodegrade, they release like toxic gases and other things. It's only been in the last few years where people have been looking for a true eco-plastic, and it's looking like this might be a really good option. Here's the thing, like, a lot of people do not realize this, but lobsters, crabs, shrimp, their closest land-living relative is the cockroach. Their shells are very, very tough, and they can make a very tough plastic-like material. Their shells are the way they are as a defense to help protect them from predators. It's hard to chew through, which is going to make it an awesome plastic. I just hope they can make it truly as biodegradable and eco-friendly as they want it to be, because we all know that plastic is terrible for the environment, but what a lot of people don't understand is how it's bad. So here's the thing: plastic never truly biodegrades, or it doesn't really degrade at all. Like, it just keeps breaking down into smaller and smaller particles, and even though it breaks down to the point where it can no longer be seen by the human eye, it's still there. And more research is being done on sea life and constantly finding plastic in the bellies of whales and sea turtles and all kinds of other sea life. And this is bad shit. Like, this is the kind of shit we do not want to happen. We rely on this sea life to keep the ecosystem going. Not just that, but also for food, for certain products that we create. And we need them to be in excellent shape, and plastic is killing all this stuff off. And this new design is, I think currently, there's no patent on it yet, but they're trying to get a patent. I guess they're going through that process right now. And we don't really know a whole lot about it, other than these lobster, crab, and shrimp shells are readily available. And the designers of this plastic are confident that they can minimize and eventually eliminate the environmental harm caused by traditional plastics, specifically things like single-use water bottles and stuff like that. John, do you have any opinion on this?
I think if they can make it work, then they definitely should. We're already going to be using these animals for food, so you might as well make something out of the rest of it. Definitely. There's no reason not to. I wish that they had been more serious about making this kind of stuff up 30 years ago. Maybe we'd be in a better shape than we're in now, and we wouldn't be heading in the direction that we're heading in. Hopefully, it's not too late.
Yeah, I hope so. It's definitely companies like this that are trying to make a difference and really pushing forward with their product. But it's really unfortunate that the biodegradable plastics we've seen in the past have not really been up to par with what we want them to be and what we need them to be. And it's products like this that are eventually going to hopefully take over, and we'll all eventually hopefully be drinking out of a lobster shell bottle that will biodegrade properly. Some biodegradable plastics will not biodegrade in a landfill. They have to be taken to a certain type of plant and treated properly to biodegrade right, like in the right way. And that's not ideal, right?
Definitely.
So this is very, very cool development. And I'm going to be keeping an eye on this, and hopefully I'll be able to share information as it comes out. And also, I wanted to throw out some information related to our last... John, I didn't send you this link, but Dr. He, the Chinese guy that did the engineering, the genetic engineering to make those twins...
Oh, yes, Dr. Frankenstein.
Yes, he is now missing.
Shocking.
Yeah, there's some thoughts that he's just out and about, and there's some other thoughts that the government may have picked him up for a vacation to give him a stern talking to.
Were I forced to guess, I would assume he is in hiding from his government. China is not exactly known for their human rights.
As we reported on either the last podcast or the podcast before, they're getting what's the word I'm looking for, John? With the social
brutally
credit.
murdered.
I'm
No
talking
way.
about the
No, that's not what that was.
the social credit stuff that they're doing over there to keep
Yeah,
people.
they're rating people based on
Yeah,
behavior.
yeah. It's
No,
kind of
but
a shit show over there.
I mean, there's no accountability with the government there at all. They don't have the same type of checks and balances that we have. We don't have enough checks and balances, but there's much less there. And there's a strange part of me that can't help but wonder if Dr. He went to sleep in his own bed, woke up in a dark room with a hood on his with a hood over his head, hearing a voice say, "Make me some Supermen." Like
That's
it's not outside the realm of possibility that someone saw what he's doing, extrapolated things that are 3 generations away from being possible, and want results that aren't plausible.
I kind of consider the same thing, to be honest. I just wanted to update everybody on that topic that we reported on.
Love Dr. He.
Yep. So we're going to move on to our next topic here, unless you wanted to add to the lobster shell plastics anymore.
No, I just hope they continue with it, and I hope that it works out the way in a way that's going to be positive for all of us.
So I'm definitely going to save the best topic for last. And John, you're probably fully aware of what I'm saving for last. We only have 2 topics left. So our second to last topic of the day, Jake Gyllenhaal has been tapped to play Mysterio. I had no idea this was in the works. Did you?
No, but it's a great choice. I don't just say that because I have liked Jake Gyllenhaal and everything I've seen him in, including things that I typically wouldn't enjoy.
Same.
He's just a phenomenal actor. He makes you believe he is whoever he is at the time, and it's just I think this is an awesome choice.
Did you know? A lot of people do not know this, but the original Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, it came down to Jake Gyllenhaal and Tobey Maguire. Yeah, and Tobey got it.
That would have been such a better film. Although I can't help but wonder if Peter Parker Maguire have been in Donnie Darko.
Wait, what?
Different movie.
See, here's my thing with Jake Gyllenhaal. He throws himself like head first, and like he's one of the hardest working actors in Hollywood. And I think while I think it's great that he's going to be Mysterio, I can't help but think that he could have been used much better.
Well, it's possible that you think that because you may only know Mysterio from the 90s Spider-Man cartoon.
That's correct. I'm going to be honest.
Right. So in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, he was kind of used as
which was a great cartoon, by the way.
It was a great cartoon, and went through a lot of really good storylines. It did the Clone Saga better than the comics did. It did some really good stuff, really deep stuff for being a kid's cartoon in the 90s. And can be said of the X-Men program from the same time frame. But Mysterio in that show and in a couple of the video games, actually, he just kind of is a B-list, no background, just wants to steal stuff for the sake of stealing stuff, give Peter Parker something to do kind of guy. He's criminal mastermind. No one ever really knows what his real motivations are. Nothing he does makes sense to anyone but him, and he's one of the most dangerous people in the entirety of Marvel Comics. Mysterio is the villain that was hired as a little bit of an aside. Do you know what Old Man Logan is?
God, that sounds really familiar. Where have I heard that?
It's an alternate future comic where Wolverine is after the current time. Wolverine was tricked into killing all the X-Men. Mysterio was able to overcome all of Wolverine's senses and superpowers and make him think that he was fighting all the villains from his past. In reality, he was fighting the X-Men. it works. And what you have in Old Man Logan is 30 years later, this guilt-stricken Wolverine who can't die because he's Wolverine, in a very dystopic America, and he spends the entire time dealing with the fact that he killed everyone he ever loved. Mysterio is the villain that was tapped to make that happen after all these years of not being able to be defeated by Apocalypse to the Red Skull. It's Mysterio who's powerful enough with his mind tricks and his special effects and illusions. The guy is very interesting. He's very powerful as far as his mind power goes. Depending on which version of him that they use, he may or may not be able to teleport from one place to another and have telepathy, just depending on which version they use.
Sony is the studio that's doing Spider-Man, but they allowed him into the MCU. I'm not sure of all of the stipulations on that deal. Do you think this could potentially set up a long-term kind of villain for the next phase of the MCU, with Jake Gyllenhaal being the talented actor that he is?
I think that would be a strange choice. And I think that because the most recent Homecoming, correct?
Yes, and the title that's
called
coming,
Long Way From Home,
or Far From Home.
And so I think that what we're going to see here possibly is the Black Suit saga. I think it's going to start with Mysterio and it's going to go from there. To be that based on the fact that it's called Far From Home. So we're going to see a great supporting role for Gyllenhaal, but I don't think we're going to see this character more than once in the films. But I think he's going to leave a pretty big mark in it just because of who he is and how I think he's likely to handle the role.
I think Tom Holland did a pretty good job of well, you know, he's a fairly small guy, like as far as stature goes. Not only that, he was pretty much, you know, mostly an unknown actor when he got the Spider-Man gig. And not only was Robert Downey Jr. in that movie, but also Marissa Tomei, as well as Michael Keaton, the original Batman, as the villain Vulture. And then, you know, he was also in Civil War. And he can really stand up with some of the big acting names. And I thought, you know, he did a great job in playing his role. And he can act with the big boys. And that's always going to be my concern when you bring in an actor like Jake Gyllenhaal, who's so talented and really has the potential to steal the show, as it were, similar to Robert Downey Jr.
Right. Well, I mean, bringing Downey into it, he went through all those scenes with Robert Downey Jr. and was still on his feet, and for that to be the case, that's difficult for anyone just to share a screen with Robert Downey Jr. I give props to anyone in any of the Avengers films for the same thing. These people all held their own with a guy who that the camera just drifts to him naturally.
Yeah.
And
it's
being able to survive that and still have character in your characters, it says a lot.
So, I mean, I think Jake Gyllenhaal definitely has a similar presence there. So it's going to be interesting to see how he hangs with this much different actor who's known for, you know, really just becoming the character, you know? Although Tom Holland has done, as you have pointed out, a great job of doing the same thing with Peter Parker. So I think Far From Home is going to be an excellent Spider-Man movie. I'm pretty psyched for it, which is funny because I've never been excited about a Spider-Man movie, ever. Even when they said Michael Keaton was going to be in the most recent one, I was just like, but it's still a Spider-Man movie. Like, yeah. I don't know about you, but my first movie I ever went to see in theaters as a kid was the first Batman.
That's a good first movie.
Do you remember that scene, like, you know how when you go to a movie for the first time in your life, certain things just kind of stick with you, or like anytime
Sure.
something happens for the first time in your life, it tends to stick with you. And there's a scene in the original Batman, like, it's kind of corny looking back at it, but I loved it at the time. It showed this bad guy running down the street, and Batman was just at the corner and just like threw his fist out from the side of the building and hit the guy in the face. Like, I was hoping they would do that as Vulture, like in the Spider-Man movie. Like, I knew it wasn't gonna happen, but I was like, please just do something from the old Batman movie, please.
That would have been sweet, man. There are so many just quotable things from that film, and there's so many iconic moments, and just you see over and over throughout the years in clips of stuff, and just it's I think probably one of Jack Nicholson's best performances. And I'm sure that if he heard someone say that, he would probably punch them in the face right now, but.
I don't think so. I think
as great of an actor as that guy is, and there was a time when Jack Nicholson literally was the best actor in the world, in my opinion. And
well, he's still one of the best.
Time frame when Cuckoo's Nest, from the era from Cuckoo's Nest to The Shining, he probably, I don't think you could beat him as an actor in that time frame. Not to say that he's not great now, but when he was at the top of his game, no one could have beaten him.
Well, as he's gotten older, the types of roles that he's been able to choose have changed. Like, he's now having to choose roles that are of older characters, who aren't able to do some of the things a younger person would be able to do. Because, I mean, he's in his 70s now, right?
My understanding is that there are for the past 20 years or so, there have been a lot of directors who just aren't really interested in working with him because of the person that he is. He is definitely, in my opinion, someone who fame was not kind to on a personality level. I think that no one is really ever ready to become a famous person. I think that lots of people think that they are, and there are plenty of people who handle it with some degree of success, but no one's ever really ready for it. And I think that doubly him, because he's my understanding is he's a very loner type of person. He's very much keeps to himself. He is he's an introvert in a lot of ways when he's not, and he had no support network. So between people trying to take advantage of him and the massive alcohol problem he had, he turned into. And people just kind of stopped wanting to work with him. And so, a good 5 or 6 years into that, he started taking roles that he could get, and they weren't always in the best films. They weren't always the best type of role. And then, that was that slow downward slope into what's around as some people.
I think looking back on it, I think he should look at it as one of his best roles, because it was kind of, no one had really, and no one, I mean, Heath Ledger came close, don't get me wrong, but that character of the Joker that Nicholson played stuck into people's mind, to this day.
Sure.
To this day. People still remember a movie that's, almost 30 years old now?
It's more than that, isn't it?
It's 89, so 99, 09. Yeah, almost 30 years old.
There's not been a bad actor play the Joker.
That's fair.
Actors to play Batman.
You mean George Clooney and Val Kilmer? Specifically?
There have been good actors who have played Batman poorly. There's never been a bad Joker.
It's funny that you say
Cameron
that.
Monaghan, the guy who is playing in Gotham, nearly as good as anyone else who's done it before. And if this continues the way I think it's going to, I think he may surpass them.
I hope they tap him for future Batman movies, to be honest. I don't think they will, but I hope they do.
I actually liked it as much as I don't like multiple Spider-Mans, different actors playing different things, the same character. I do like that we keep getting different actors playing the Joker. And the reason I like that is that in the comics, so about 2 years ago, maybe it's 3 years ago now, came across a source of infinite power, and the throne of the I believe it was the Anti-Monitor, the name of the character. Hopefully, someone will correct me if I'm wrong. It was basically this tool that if you sit in it, can extrapolate any piece of information, and so they, Superman, Batman, and a few of the Justice League, and they take him off his chair. Batman sits down. And the question is, who's the Joker? There's three. There's more than one Joker within the mainstream DC universe, let alone all the other multiverses. So the idea within Gotham of more than one character being that Joker-esque, no one's been called the Joker yet in Gotham because it's different. It lines up with the comics, and you can look at Suicide Squad and look at Dark Knight and look at this new Joker film, which I'm not sure if you saw the teaser trailer for this. Is 30 seconds of him laughing.
It's Joaquin Phoenix, dude. It's gonna be a good movie.
It's chilling.
That guy.
If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. It's fucking chilling.
Of course, I've watched it.
This camera just zooming in on him, just chuckling. All it is 30 seconds long, and if you can't feelings watching that, you're dead. This is the end of you.
Well, that's what the Joker is supposed to do. So I think that's just they're just giving us a heads up that this movie's the real deal as far as an embodiment of the Joker is concerned. And this has got me pretty hype. I think it has most of the nerd world pretty hype at this point. They finally released a new trailer for Captain Marvel. I don't know quite where to start. Well, I guess we can just start with the trailer itself. The fight with the old lady looks to be one of the most entertaining things I've ever seen in my life. Like, it kind of caught me off guard, but then it just got crazy. I think Captain Marvel is known to be one of the most powerful people in the Marvel universe. I never read that comic as a kid. I was more just like, I was a pretty normal little boy. Like, I wanted to read comics about grown men with superpowers because that's what I wanted to become when I grew up. So I definitely regret not reading more female-led comics at this point in my life. I think it would have done me a lot of good, but, I was a typical little kid growing up in the 80s, so sue me. But this new trailer just looks insane, and I think if this movie is what it ends up being, what I think it's going to end up being, we're looking at a huge change in comic movies as far as female leads are concerned. John, do you want to throw in your thoughts and speculations here?
As someone who's wanted a Black Widow movie since the first Avengers film, I definitely agree. Marvel Comics is chock full of very, very strong, very good female characters, interesting ins and outs, lots of interesting personality traits that the films unfortunately have largely ignored. I'm not sure why there's not more people talking about this part of it, especially since the getting more and more inclusive of everyone, no matter what your gender, your race, your orientation, your sexuality or anything. So we're finally starting to see catch up with the fact that it is okay to be you, and for it to be this long to have a female lead for a Marvel film, I think is kind of a tragedy in a way. I
completely agree. Completely agree.
for it, and I think it will. I think that there's going to be a lot of interesting Easter eggs to the history of this character. Carol Danvers' character is very, very rich, very storied. There's a lot to this. Something I think that's very interesting to see here on a little bit different tack, but on the same subject, is that we're finally getting the inclusion of Skrulls into the Marvel universe, and Skrulls group to be bad guys. Skrulls tells me that it's not impossible to see a Fantastic Four film. It tells me that it's not impossible to see worst. It's not impossible to see weird intrigue. That's what the Skrulls brought to the Marvel Comics universe, was weird intrigue. The ability to shapeshift and to avoid detection can lead to some really interesting situations, and I think that I hope that we see a continuation of that. I'm also honestly hoping that the next season of S.H.I.E.L.D. deals with Skrulls. That's something that I think that they could handle very well on that show. They're set up for it, and it would be a positive way to continue the connections between the cinematic universe and that specific show.
I'm almost done with the third season at this point. Clearly, I've been binging a little bit. I'm going to be honest, but I have Netflix, so I can do it. And you're right. Like they are set up to do all kinds of shit that other TV shows in the past I only wish they could have had. Right? Like that show is just everything you said it was going to be. But what did you think about the trailer itself? I personally, it's been a long time since I've seen a trailer and been like, holy fuck. Well, that's a lie. There have been 2 trailers recently that made me do that. The Aquaman trailer and then this trailer. And, you and I, sure, we don't get out to the movies a whole lot. It's just not what we really do. But I'm going to go see Aquaman. I don't think I can wait for it to come out on video.
Yeah, I'm pretty likely to as well. I'm a big Jason Momoa guy, and
Same.
That dude he's very versatile, and just seems like a fun dude in real life too. I think that
he's a true entertainer.
Could be super great. Now, as far as this trailer went, actually, quite a bit of this footage we've actually already seen before in clips and phrases, So really, a lot of it was them, cobbling together some clips they've already released or leaked. I do like the fact that Fury seems to be a pretty integral part of the film. I think it's a character that we don't see near enough of.
Yeah, we've talked about that before, about, just while on one hand it's great to have that mystery behind Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., to where he just kind of, I've said it before, Fury shows up when we need a bigger gun. But Samuel L. Jackson is one of the most talented actors out there. And he's definitely being wasted a little bit, and hopefully we get to see some more of his talent in this movie. Tarantino's been hogging this talent for, the better part of 20 years, and I'm ready to see more of that character.
One thing I do think is interesting is they've included Carol Danvers' dog in. Actually, the dog actually is a character that makes a difference in the Marvel Comics universe. I'm going to mention why, because I think that they might actually explore that, and I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but pay attention to the dog for sure.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but in the comics there were multiple Captain Marvels, right? Carol Danvers,
3 or 4.
Yeah, and Carol was the first. Is that right?
Really not. The original Captain Marvel was a half Kree, half human named Marvel. It's gonna be dorky sometimes, and that's just one of those things. The original Captain Marvel died of cancer in the 80s. Is semi-jokingly referred to by many people as the one of two people in comics that ever stayed dead. The first being Uncle Ben, of course. Basically, anyone else in the history of popular comics that has died has come back somehow or another. Captain Marvel's gone, and probably forever. He was a very interesting character. The dual nature of dealing with being part Kree, part human. Carol Danvers, and she eventually be one other, but I forget the name of the actual name of the character.
So all the Captain Marvels have these like Kree powers, right? Like I'm not sure. I haven't read the comics, so I'm not sure how Captain Marvel got her abilities. Well, Carol specifically. But
it's a gene splicing thing, I believe.
Okay, so they all have pretty much the same powers, and they got them the same way.
Pretty much. Well, I mean, the original Captain Marvel was he was half, because he had one race mom and the other race dad. I forget what, but he's natural. Carol was experimented on by the Kree.
Interesting. That's something that we've seen quite a bit in the MCU. Is a lot of their characters that they've brought in so far were people who've been experimented on, such as
it's a common theme among most Marvel things. The question of can science / should science,
right? But I mean, when most people think of Marvel, at least growing up in the 90s, we immediately thought of X-Men, who were mutants who were born that way. They were pretty much born with the ability, but it didn't trigger until something happened, right? And then like in the MCU comes along, we start seeing more of the quote unquote enhanced people, right? Like,
well, yeah, because those are the ones that weren't sold off to Fox at the beginning of the millennium.
That's true, but there are still some other mutant creatures out there. They tried with the Inhumans, like they incorporated Inhumans into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and they incorporated Inhumans into its own television show, which flopped horribly because it was a bad show.
It was handled very poorly.
But, that's something they could have done, right? That's something they could have incorporated more into the MCU as well. And it just seems odd that they went with the more enhanced route. But yes, you're right. I mean, I'm sure a lot of it had to deal with the fact that, that those properties were sold off.
But the comics, the Inhumans have never been super popular or super involved. Like one of the points of the Inhumans is they're actually experiments too. They're Kree experiments,
right,
on humans. That's where the Inhumans come from. But one of the whole points of that is looking at a society of people that are different, that want to be separate, as opposed to mutants who just want to live their lives. Juxtaposition between the two, and that's why there was never a whole lot of interlap between humans and X-Men, except for in cases of extreme emergency. There's also a science-based mini culture, which is why you see Inhumans and the Fantastic Four deal with each other a lot, because Fantastic Four deals with science a lot.
Yep. I'm hoping that the MCU makes a good Fantastic Four movie at some point.
I hope that they don't make a Fantastic Four film. I hope that they introduce the characters as secondary flash to other characters that deserve more screen time. Sony had 2 shots at,
and they were
three shots, and they've all fucking sucked.
Yeah.
So no, I don't want a Fantastic Four film. I want Reed Richards to be a catalyst of he helps the main character that actually matters, and then helps that way. That's what I want to see myself.
So they kind of pointed towards, the introduction of Captain Marvel, as well as this last Avengers movie, as being this intertwined catalyst and to get them into the next phase of the MCU. So do you think we're going to see a lot more Kree involvement in the MCU? as well as, you know, Captain Marvel.
Well, I think that what we're likely to see is the Kree Skrull War, which also feeds into the Secret Wars. So we're going to see some films dealing with the distrust based on not knowing what your enemy looks like and not really being able to detect it very easily. I think that's a lot of what we're going to see.
Well,
We're going to see
the Russo brothers, is that how you say it? The guys that directed this latest Avengers film? They said they would love to get their hands on a Secret War script. So, I mean, that could very well happen. You could be very right about that.
There were a lot of really compelling stories told during both the first and second Secret Wars, and there's a lot of material to draw from there. And if they do that, I think it could be very successful.
I think that's gonna about wrap it up for the show today. Do you have anything you want to add before we shut her down?
No, I think we've pretty much covered everything I wanted to cover.
Excellent. So, thanks everybody for stopping by and listening to our podcast. Once again, this is the Nerd Talk podcast by the Digital Worm. I'm your co-host, Matt, and I was here with my co-host and good buddy, John, and we will see you next week. You guys take care.